Thank you, Melinda, for your exciting talk. We have time for 3 questions, because we started late. Eva.
Well, let's say I will have comments, but maybe we can talk later. But otherwise, I have one general question. Do you think that there could be, well, it's a bit complicated, there could be a shift at the population level of the latest age of conception because of postponement? So I'm thinking about selection. Like, do you think, like in the next generations, there could be a population level shift because we are speaking about shift?
So this is exactly the kind of thing that we're starting to look at. So with evolution and natural selection in a very short period of time, some people think you can detect it, but we're thinking you can't detect it. So there was a study that came out last year of a colleague of mine in Proceedings of National Academy of Science, looking at Iceland, not acknowledging at all the social context there, amazingly, saying that they were seeing natural selection over time. And they connected it with natural selection by higher education as well, too. So they're linking educational levels with fertility and showing that there's not only a selection of postponement, but a selection by the higher educated having less children. So that's why social scientists need to come into this debate for multiple reasons. So to actually look at selection, we realized we needed to look at a longer period. So that's why we're connecting with Robert Reich's group, and we're looking at this is crazy, I realize, looking at Neanderthals and variation across various species, and we're trying to look at really the long-term thing. We've also grouped together with people in Oxford that link with historians, because this is really important, and look at different bottlenecks, like the Arab slave trade and migration, and remember when they used to conquer certain societies, you know, there were certain things that went on that involved an admixture. So we're connecting that to try to look and connect migration and fertility over time, to look at these selection issues. You need a long time span.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy because this is really a very exciting new field, I think, for demographers and many portions going into this field. I have a question. You didn't say much about epigenetics, and maybe you can say a few words, because I mean, for the genome expression, it's so important. In particular, there are all these exciting thoughts about possibly passing on to the next generation some acquired characteristics. Could you say a few words how this fits to your work?
Yeah, so epigenetics at the moment has largely consisted of blood data and blood tissue. So that's actually been an issue. So most people have looked at that, and as a result, it means that we haven't really found much except the effects of maternal smoking on fertility and outcomes. So that has an epigenetic effect. So it influences the passing on of genetic loci. Also famine as well has been shown to be important. But actually just within the last year or so, epigenetics has expanded to different tissues. So we're actually working with somebody, it's on most tissues at the moment. And I keep saying to him, we can't translate mice exactly to humans. And he's like, no, they're very social. So we're looking at things related to fertility-related tissue as well, too. And what we found is a relationship with pancreatic tissue, so this could be interesting. And there's a strong relationship with development, BMI, waist-hip ratio, and fertility. So that's kind of going in that direction, but as of yet, it's another frontier. Yeah.
Natalie and Eric.
Yeah, thank you very much for your talk, and I really love your work. I have a question related to one person versus two persons, and you know, you talk about sex, and sex usually is a two-person activity, I would say, and looking at genes is a one-person activity. So I have two questions related to this. How are the genes of both partners interacting and producing these outcomes? And then second, by the change over cohort that you're showing and the effect of the genes, and I've been wondering if there's, social science in your partnering mechanisms have changed in how we choose partners, more based on biological instincts, more based on thought more based on descriptive social environments doing what certain people to partner up with. How could this relate to how genes affect fertility outcomes?
Okay, so yeah, a few questions there. Just maybe I'll give you a short answer because I know we're probably a bit out of time and we can talk about it later. But in terms of couples, it's exactly sort of the thing that we're starting to look at now too. The problem with couples is there's been a lot of research. One article just came out last week in Nature Human Behavior on assortative mating. There was another one that came out a few years ago in Proceedings of National Academy of Science. And couples are more genetically similar. As our friends. So that's been shown a few times. But what that's related to is what's called population stratification. So people are fishing from the same geographic pool, so in the same area. So it's a little bit trickier than we think. And I don't know, everybody knows about the app, I can't say the name of it, in Iceland that you can use in order not to team up with a first, second, or third cousin. You know, there's a lot of issues there. But we are looking at, and what's really exciting as a spin-off to the project I'm talking about now, we're looking at trios, so parents and their children, and we're looking at the actual intergenerational transmission of genes. And what's extremely exciting, it's an extension of a science paper from last year, is that mothers matter more. So the mother's transmission of different fertility genes seem to be much more important and as well for educational attainment. So we're trying to look at trios, parents, children, and there is some work in assortative mating.
I just wanted to ask in a similar direction as ever before, namely with regard to selection, what your results allow you to say with regard to the future of fertility. Because you briefly mentioned that the same traits that relate to risk aversion are also related to postponement. So is it fair to say then that the less risk averse will inherit the earth, and that in the future sort of people will start to have children on average earlier again, and that fertility will therefore rise again because only those will have children that are less risk averse?
So yeah, interesting question, and I mean, why I think social scientists need to be in this field as well too is that people often argue it genetically, so they are saying those things about risk aversion and education and things like that, but I always bring out, hey buddies, it's about, you're predicting, genetics is predicting maybe 2% or 3%, and social science predictors are still 40, 50% predictors. So what we try to do is gene-environment interaction. And, you know, a nice example is we look at children using longitudinal data that grew up in impoverished neighborhoods, and we look at ones that grew up in high-resource neighborhoods. We can see for the ones from low-resource neighborhoods, even if they have a very high cognitive genetic ability, it won't be realized in a poor resource environment when they're adults. Whereas in the high-resource environments, even the ones that have the lowest educational ability realize that potential. So it's really a lot about inequality, and the social environment really has a very strong role to play in whether these genetic predispositions are realized. So it's, yeah, so I think we actually have and you can see it's hilarious, it's shifting in that direction now at the genetics conferences. They're like, oh, we have to look at the environment, and we were just looking at pollution, and maybe it's not just pollution, maybe the environment is norm. Yeah, yeah, I think we're moving in that direction.
All right. Well, one last question.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask about how you would define childlessness in your studies. Because some years ago, when I'm making a presentation on childlessness, defining it as someone who doesn't have a child in his entire life, I was challenged by a professor from University of Rome who said that she is a child-free woman rather than a childless person. By child-free, she means that she could have had a child, but she doesn't want to have it.
Yeah.
So by childlessness, if you simply say that someone who couldn't able to be a child has childlessness, and how do you distinguish between these two concepts, which is really coming up with the environment in which you are working? Thank you.
Yeah, really important question. So the definition of childlessness. So the technical definition is women 45 and above, men 55 and above that don't have children. That's technically how we used it in the analysis. But what we're actually trying to to piece out here is sort of the holy grail between voluntary and involuntary childlessness, so the childless and the child-free. So we're trying to see who had these genetic predispositions or biological problems that might result in them becoming childless. And you can see it's sort of two different groups, and we have the sort of child-free group, and they have, in terms of personality traits and different characteristics, they're quite different as well too. So definitely something that us or others can go on to pursue. We make all of our results immediately available and publicly online. And just one last advertisement. We have a book coming out with MIT Press on how to do these types of analyses. A really, really accessible open book. It is an R, but to show you how to do these analyses. So, you know, look out for that. And if you want to be a beta tester, we can send it to you as well too.
Thanks a lot, Melinda, for your super enthusiastic talk.